I was at a meeting in Hendersonville, North Carolina, back in I've got to check my journal to find out when it was. You know, at my age, I don't trust my memory on a lot of things. Some things I'm never going to forget. But anyway, we were having this meeting, and it's question and answer time. So somebody says, do you camp out when you're doing this archaeological stuff? And I said, friend, I'm a Korean War veteran. I had all the camping out I ever want to participate in. I stay in a cheap hotel and you know, shuffle back and forth. Somebody else says, well, and I told them the name of it. I said, I stay in the Jerusalem Hotel on Nablus Street north of the Damascus Gate. Somebody else asked, when are you going back? And I said, around the middle of September. So I saved my money, got my faithful dig crew, and off we went. And when I arrived at the Jerusalem Hotel, sitting on the front stoop was this medical doctor who said, Ron, I'm here to help you. Well, bless his heart, he hadn't asked my permission or anything, said nothing. He just popped up. Well, that makes me rather unlikely to give him the combination to the vault, if you know what I mean. And so, anyway, I was convinced that one of my dumb mistakes had been too many and that God couldn't use me anymore. So he'd sent this fellow there so I couldn't work on the Ark of the Covenant. And he would have had to share my experiences in order to know what a crushing blow that was. See, I know I'm unworthy. And I thought, okay, finally you've messed up and you're out of it. I said a little prayer. I said, Lord, I'm sorry. If there's anything I can help whoever you want to finish the job, just let me know and I'll do what I can. Well, I couldn't work on the Ark of the Covenant with that guy around, so we volunteered to clean the garden tomb. In the back part of it, there was about 100 years worth of garbage and one thing and another that had just been thrown back there over the years. So we hauled out of there something like 20 big truckloads of trash. And it was hot that September, blistering hot. And I had gotten a little fan to get some air stirring, and the fan died. Well, added on the rest of my miseries, that was almost too much. You know, you remember the story of Jonah and his gourd vine? I could sympathize with him at that point in time. Anyway, I told everybody else, I said, look, just find you a shade somewhere and eat your lunches. And I'll try to fix the fan. So I just sat down. Any of you been there to the garden tomb? Okay. You know where the little chapel is? Around the corner? I was sitting right flat on the ground in front of that chapel. And you know there's a set of steps that come up to a sidewalk and goes out to the main sidewalk. Anyway, I was sitting down there working on this fan. Didn't even bother to unplug it. And a voice said to me, he said, God bless you. In what you're doing here. He was at the top of those stairs. And he walked right back that little short sidewalk, took a right at that big pine tree, and headed for the front gate. Well, this doctor of all people was the only one in earshot. And he was back under some shrubs in the shade eating his lunch, and he piped up and he says, Ron, do you suppose we've been talking with an angel? And I said, at least. Well, I worked with great enthusiasm for the rest of that day. When we left the garden tomb, I asked the ladies in there, I said, what did you think of that big, tall man dressed in ancient Jewish garb? And they looked at me kind of funny. And they said, there's been nobody in here like that today. And then one of them said, well, Mr. Wyatt, there's never been anybody in here like that. So somewhere between where he turned right past that pine tree and before he got to the office, he went on to the New Jerusalem. Now, folks, for Christ himself to come down to encourage me about the excavation of the Ark of the Covenant tells me that it's very important to God. Appreciate the time you all have shared with me here. When I get to heaven, I'm going to look around and I want to see every one of you there. You can make it with God's help. Christ is here tonight. He says, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. He's not talking tonight in his voice. If I didn't know God was speaking through my voice, I wouldn't be up here. And God said, please, don't let all that go to waste. Please, take advantage of that wonderful opportunity.